Hello and welcome to my channel. Now you join me here in the Yorkshire countryside, of course, where I belong, and we might be expecting a little bit of rain later on, so I'm going to try and get through this, and I'll shelter under a tree and continue the vlog if the rain comes, but fingers crossed I set off nice and early and I will miss the rain. Now I am in Mythenroyd. Mythenroyd is behind me, the village of Mythenroyd, and I'm in the woods going alongside, sort of parallel to Cragg Vale. Cragg Vale is one of the, if not the longest incline, continuous incline in Britain, I do believe. So Cragg Vale's just running up along this way. So you get a lot of cyclists up and down there, good for cycling training, and takes you right up onto the top of Erringdon Moor. And that is where I'm heading, because this has become a little bit of a favourite spot of mine for vlogging and walking, and I'm considering it and scouting for a bit of a place to do a bit of the wild camping. So I'm scouting for places now. I've still got my backpack to get, and thank you very much for the comments on my previous vlog. I'm getting some really good advice on that. Now this area, Cragg Vale, I've realised just by things that have been recommended to me, there is quite a history to this place. It's a beautiful place, but it's got a bit of a dark past, and I'm going to tell you about that along the way of this vlog. So yes, this area has a dark past. Mythenroyd behind me, way behind me, down at the bottom of the valley, and we're making our way up through what is actually called Belle Woods. And I'm taking you up to one of the oldest dwellings in Cragg Vale, actually. It was the home of David Hartley, and he was known round here in Cragg Vale back in the late 1700s. He was known as King Hartley, King David Hartley. He masterminded a counterfeiting operation. They were known as the Cragg Vale Coiners, and what they did was they filed the edges of gold coins and melted the filings down to create new coins. And it was because of the location, really, of his dwelling that he was able to actually do this. And he gathered together a massive group of men, some that were handy with the fists, some that were handy with sums and accounting, and of course some that were handy with the smelting of metal. The clipping of coins had actually been going on for quite a while, and it was just it just came out of necessity, really. These were very poor people up in the valley, but this was just before the Industrial Revolution. So the people weaving up here in the valleys, the need for their work was dying out, and a lot of them, by now, the looms were just gathering dust in their room. These steps are steep, so I'm going to have a chat to you at the top of these steps. And so there is actually a book all about this story that I'm telling you, and it's called The Gallows Pole. I'm going to leave a link in the description below, and I suggest, if you're interested in this story, because I'm just going to sort of scathe over it, it's an absolutely fantastic story, and it really captured my imagination when I was imagining what was going on in these woods in Belle. This kind of operation, this counterfeiting of money, the clipping of coins, caught the attention of some wealthy people, and they wanted a piece of the action as well. Now in the book it tells of a butcher from Soby Bridge, which is about 20 miles away, plenty of money in butchery back then, and he sent his son with a bag of coins, a massive bag of coins, all the way from Soby Bridge, about 20 miles, no Uber then, all you had was horse and cart, and this lad was on foot in clogs, coming through this wood, through Belle, and it tells of his journey, and carrying this bag of coins to meet King Hartley for the first time, and he was just given a rough description to follow the river, which is down there, just to follow the stream all the way up to Erringdon Moor, where he would find Belle House. So we're going to continue up through Belle and end up coming out onto Erringdon Moor. Let me just get down these little steps. It's quite slippy underfoot today, and it's always a little bit damp in here. So yes, there was a lot of currency about down there in Halifax and Mytholmroyd due to the coming of the mills. There was a lot of wealthy people in this area down there. But up here, these people were a little bit more feral. If you were walking through these woods, for instance, as it tells in the book, as the lad was walking with his bag of coins, he only got halfway through the woods, like round about where I am now. And this older lad came out from nowhere, asking him where he was going, with a catapult in his hand. And he told him that, you know, strangers weren't welcome. You're not allowed to go any further. So they were really territorial, quite steep up. So they were really territorial back then, you can imagine. Can you imagine if I'd found a bag of gold coins? Because some people say that the coins were hidden on the way up here, and others would come down and collect them later. So coins were hidden under boulders, under rocks, bottom of trees, and you can imagine the hiding places that there would be. I'm sure it wouldn't be as obvious as the boulder that I moved right next to the path. But imagine if I'd found a bag of gold coins. So back to the butcher's boy who was on his way from Sober Bridge. He's on his way to see King Hartley, a guy that he's never met before. There's a lot of flies about, I'll tell you that. So he's just got a rough description of where he's to walk following the stream all the way up to Errington Moor. And so he's met this lad who's not letting him go any further, but they had a bit of a heated conversation apparently. And then the lad believed where he was going to meet King Hartley, and the lad actually escorted him all the way up to Belle House. Still got quite a ways to go. Quite a humid day today because we have got rain on the way, but I'm doing well so far, and I hope you're enjoying the vlog. Hope you're enjoying the story. So this is a point where we come out of Belle Hole Wood and we head on up onto Errington Moor. And this is the point where I imagine that the older boy that was sort of guarding the wood for King Hartley, one of King Hartley's men, would have guided the boy up to King Hartley's house, where the coins were delivered. A big bag of gold coins delivered to King Hartley. And that's where the clipping would take place. The edges would be filed, the filings would be melted down to make new coins. And the butcher's father would make quite a tidy return on that bag of coins, and that's how it worked. So let's go up here. It's quite steep, and I think we end up coming out onto Errington Moor. And do you know what? It's just started raining. Oh dear. I could have done with the rain while I was protected by the trees. Now I'm going to come out onto the moor, and I'm fully exposed. There's no shelter up here, so this could be interesting. I am in the middle of nowhere. Errington Moor is where I've popped out, and if you look behind me in the distance you can see Belle House, and that's where David Hartley, King David Hartley as he was known, that's where he lived, and that's where all the gold coins flowed up and down this valley, from this house all the way down into Mytholmroyd and out into Halifax and beyond. And like I said, the wealthy people that were dropping money off here and supplying the counterfeiting gang, they were making a tidy return on their investment. So it ended up being a little bit like a bank, like a like an illegal bank. They dropped a bag of coins off and it multiplied. So that's what was going on here back in the late 1700s. And it's a very interesting story. And you can see why it was enabled. It was because of the location of this guy's house. Look at it, it's just hidden on the moor, sunk into the landscape there. And if you can imagine it back in the day, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I feel I'm in the middle of nowhere here. There's nothing going on. But back in the 1700s, there'll have been a lot less going on. Look how far up above everywhere we are. And I'm sure he felt like a king looking down on it all. And compared to everyone else, he was very wealthy, was David Hartley. It has started raining, so I'm going to make this quick. I'm going to have a quick scoot over there and have a closer look at Belle House, and then I'm going to make my way back down through the woods and tell you a little bit more about this fantastic story from Cragg Vale. So the rain has arrived and I'm a little bit wet. It's just stopped for a while, and it's one of them days where it is going to stop and start. I knew that, so I'm going to stop and start myself. So continuing on with the vlog. Now, this counterfeiting operation, the Cragg Vale Coiners, they were so successful, they almost brought the British currency into bankruptcy. It was noticed in London. They sent this guy out, Dighton, or Deaton, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but Inspector Dighton, I think that you pronounce it. So this Mr. Dighton was in charge of this investigation, and he came to this area, and apparently he was seen knocking about as a stranger, an obvious stranger, but he was roaming around here trying to gather information, and he was seen up on these moors as he got closer to David Hartley. We're back in the 1700s here. There was, no torches or anything like that. He'll have had a lantern standing here and looking over at Belle House and ready to make his move on King Hartley. So let's get a little bit closer to Belle House and have a look there before it starts raining again. So I am here at Belle House and the weather has improved. Now there's a guy, his name's David, I don't know his last name, but his name's David, and he is going to show me around. And now I never thought this was actually going to happen. This is unexpected, but he's going to show me around Belle House. So you're going to come in with me and we get to have a look around the actual house, inside the house that the coins were melted in and where King David Hartley lived. So come on, let's go and have a look around. So this was the original kitchen.
This was the original kitchen.
Wow, amazing.
And this was the height of the floor. That was. So we've dug it all up and dropped the floor because the beams, you were like this everywhere you went.
Right.
So we dropped the floor. It's all been done up and everything. We used the same slate, same Yorkshire slate and everything, Yorkshire stone and everything. But this was the original one. These are the original beams. We weren't allowed to touch any beam.
Right.
In the renovations at all.
Did you find anything like a bag of coins?
No. We went all over it. It was underneath the wall when we were repairing the walls down there. And I'll show you them in the barn, was clinkers. You know when you have a very hot fire?
Yeah.
And it ends up you have the clinkers.
Yes.
It's like rock when it's done. And they were hidden under there.
You would think someone would find something.
Yeah.
They're the original doors?
These are all the original doors,
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And the one at the front isn't. The original door is up round the side for that. That's how it was with the barn. It was in worse state than that. It was actually worse than that.
Can you believe that? I got to look around Belle House. Amazing house, amazing to be inside the actual house. There's no way when I started doing this vlog today on the Cragg Vale Coiners that I expected to be standing inside King David Hartley's house. So that was amazing. I hope you enjoyed that. So I'm going on to another little part of the story. And like I say, the operations of this counterfeiting gang, the Cragg Vale Coiners, came to the attention of London, and this Inspector Dighton was sent out to investigate this and actually bring them down. And it took him quite a bit to get the information needed. And one of King Hartley's men did turn informer. Offered a little bit of money, and the greed took over. King Hartley gathered all the men together, including the informer. He was there as well. There's some rocks over here where apparently he gathered the men together to talk to them about what's going on, and that there was actually an informer amongst them. So I'm going to try and find these rocks. So I'm still getting over the excitement of being inside the actual home of King David Hartley. Now, he was affectionately known as King Hartley around here because he was a little bit of a Robin Hood character, really. He looked after his own. Around here in the 1700s, there were quite a few farms and dwellings on the way up the valley, and he would supply them with logs, food, milk, anything that they needed. There was actually a blind lady or a blind fella in one of the dwellings on the way up, and he looked after him. So he was affectionately known as King David Hartley because he did look after his own, and he didn't want the mill owners and the big money men coming in and taking their land to put water wheels in and build mills. So he didn't want that, so he was looking after his own, and he was well respected up here, even though he was a ruthless crook. So this lumstone, and it's called behind me, a well weather-worn stone behind me, that features in the story as well, because apparently his brother Isaac stood on this lumstone addressing them as King Hartley came across the moor, because he was a very good speaker, was King Hartley, quite a very clever man, and he roused them up and told them that there was actually an informer amongst them, and he was probably stood amongst them right there and then. The weather is so changeable today. 1 minute it's sunny like this, absolutely glorious, I can barely keep my coat on, and then the rain comes over. So I can imagine it's very bleak in the winter. So I'm making my way back down through Belle Wood again, and I've got some little bits and bats more to tell you about this amazing story, and I can't believe that it hasn't been picked up by a film crew or something. There's every ingredient you need to make a great movie, so maybe it will be made into a movie one day. But the book is fantastic, and I'll say again, I've left a link in the description below. You can check out the book. So we're back to the rain again. Within 5 minutes of me last speaking to you, we've got the rain again. But I'm making my way back down to Belle Wood, and I'll have the shelter of the trees, so I shall see you down there. But that boggy area that I just showed you, that's actually mentioned, that area is mentioned in the book, and if I'd have walked into that, I'd have been knee deep in the peat and the bog. And in the book it talks about it swallowing sheep up at its worst in the winter. Sheep have been just completely consumed by the moor, and there's one account of a horse. A guy had to get off his horse and the horse was taken, and some people have said that if they ever dredged that and dug it up, at the bottom of it all they would one day say, what kind of creature what kind of creature sunk in the mud here with all the different bones from animals like sheep and horses, and maybe human. So I am back in the protection of the trees, the shelter of the trees, and it is actually raining out there, but it's not bad in Belle Wood. So I'm making my way back down. And when I was being shown around Belle House, the guy actually said when they were renovating it and they were knocking walls down and digging up floorboards and levelling floors out and doing the gardens, no one found any coins. Not one coin was found, not one gold coin. So that's amazing that they didn't find any. I was determined to find a bag of gold coins today myself, but you can imagine that was a long, long time ago when King David Hartley was living there and the counterfeiting was going on. So since that time, I'm sure plenty of people have totally been over the grounds and the property when it was derelict, and they might have found some gold coins then. So maybe there's just none left, but you get a feeling there might be just a bag left somewhere that someone hasn't found. It's quite a good story really when you think about it. At this point of the story, we have an informer, and he did inform. He told Inspector Deaton of the counterfeiting gang and enough information to bring down King Hartley, and that's exactly what happened. Deaton, the solicitor, and the informer from the gang, he signed this statement, this sort of witness statement that would eventually condemn King Hartley and his gang. And on the strength of that, armed with that, Deaton did make arrests, and he arrested Hartley in a pub in Mytholmroyd, and he was taken straight to York dungeons, to York prison, and that's where he stayed for about 6 months. Now, after the meeting with King Hartley and his brothers on the Lumstones up there, as I showed you, they were all really riled up about there being an informer, someone in the camp that was telling on them to Inspector Deaton. And a few of the gang were wandering back down to Mytholmroyd, through Belle, through here. And there was a guy on his own walking up through Belle, and he was actually what they call an odd job man, a bodger. I think they called them bodgers back then. I think that's what they called him. He was a bodger. He had his toolkit on him. And these guys said, you know, who are you? We don't know who you are. What are you doing around here? And they really were suspicious that he was one of Deaton's men sent up to sort of do a bit of snooping around. And the guy insisted that he was just a bodger, you know, out for work, and then he would do a bit of work and then move on, fix fences and stuff like that. But they didn't believe him, and they set about him and actually kicked him to death and kicked him down. You can imagine, kicked him down into the bottom of here, and his body was found some days later. I'm surprised I didn't see any deer today because I was here quite early, but they do roam around here. They've got hares. It's actually quite a protected area for wildlife. There's some species of bird that only nests around here, so it's quite protected. Now, at this point in the story, King David Hartley has been arrested, and he is now in York prison, in the dungeons, and the rats are running around him every night, nibbling his feet. And he's there for 6 months. And during that 6-month period, King Hartley's own men avenged him, and they actually did set about Inspector Deaton, and they murdered him on his way from Halifax to Mytholmroyd. They ambushed him, and they did murder him. I'm getting near to the end of my walk now. The Gallows Pole, the story that I read about Mytholmroyd and the Cragg Vale Coiners, amazing story. I can't believe it hasn't been picked up by a filmmaker and made into a film. All the ingredients are there. So we're near the end of my walk, and I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've stayed with me all the way through, and I've really enjoyed your company. But we've got a little bit further to go, and so at this point, where are we now? Yes, King David is in jail. He's in a dungeon, really, in York Dungeon. They took him straight to York Dungeon, and that's where he stayed for 6 months. And a large number of the counterfeiting crew, they were arrested as well, and they were also in York Dungeon. And there they stayed for for about 6 months. And I'm sure that while he was in there, he was thinking, blimey, I thought I would have been released by now on lack of evidence. You see, he didn't know that they did actually have a signed statement from the member of his own gang that turned informer. So as I leave Belle Wood behind and come into the daylight once again, and it is still raining a little bit, how does the story end? Well, the members of the crew that were at York Dungeons, including King David Hartley, who lived up there in Belle House, as you saw, and you could imagine why he felt like a king up there. And he was well respected and well loved by the people around here in Mythenroyd and Cragg Vale, because he did look after his own. But he was a crook, and a ruthless crook at that. They were hung for their crimes at York Gallows. His widow actually went on to live there for quite some time up at Belle House, and then she moved on further on the moor, and she purchased a house back then for about £500. God knows what kind of money that was in cash. She paid cash for the house, so that tells you something. Maybe that's why there's no bags of coins knocking about, because she knew where they all were. So she bought a house cash of 500 and some pounds back then, and she lived there for the rest of her days. King Hartley's body was brought from York, horse and cart job, all the way over to Heptonstall churchyard. So I am here at Heptonstall churchyard, and I have found the grave of King David Hartley, and the rest of his family, of course, are buried here as well. So that is a fitting end to this vlog. I hope you've enjoyed the walk. I've enjoyed your company, and I really enjoy this little story. And if you're interested in more of the story, and the real story is the book, The Gallows Pole, and I will leave a link in the description below, and you must check that out if you're interested. So if you've enjoyed this vlog, and I hope you have, consider subscribing and give me a like. And until the next one, bye.